Hi guys, welcome to the Sunday slot. This is going to be a fantastic story. Author Leonard Lowe is joining us to talk about the witches. Wow, I couldn't believe when I heard some of the things. I've been talking into the green room about some of the stuff, and to a degree, some of it's horrific, and some of it is, you've got to laugh at it because it just seems so bizarre in today's society. And then also his obsession with Jack the Ripper and all these different things. So we're going to bring Leonard onto the show. So Leonard, hi Leonard, how are you?
Hello there, good morning.
So Leonard, tell me
how are you all?
Absolutely fantastic. So if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to ask Leonard. More than happy to take any questions and answer any of them. But also, if we're going to talk about Leonard, how this all came about, and then also we're going to talk about, as I said, the witches and the obsession with Jack the Ripper. No surprise, it's pretty horrific. But the fact is, the background we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about the Untold Stories of Scotland, which I've been reading and I find absolutely hilarious. It actually reminds me of ripping yarns to a degree, in terms of that, in terms of the Monty Python team and stuff like that. But it's all factual and it's all true, and I just can't believe some of these stories in there. But they're all nice and bite size. Anyway, so Leonard, how did all this come about for you as an author? Where did all this start? I mean, was this an obsession as a child, or?
I was kind of spoilt when I was wee because my father had such a collection of books. He was a great historian. He books gathered through the family, I should say. And when he passed, I've ended up with them. And these books go right back to the 1600s. They're books about Fife. They're statistical accounts. They're diaries, and they're all first editions. And when I was a kid, I was never to go near them, but I'd steal a book now and again and have a read, and they're utterly fascinating. These books itemized witch trials along the Fife coastline that I'd never heard of. I mean, The Wizard of Oz was the nearest we came to witches when I was a kid, and then
that's it, isn't it?
The real things on my doorstep.
We actually, that's how we looked at things. It's like that's all we ever knew about witches was something you saw on the television, but to actually hear about it and to start hearing what you know about it and what you've documented about it, I was pretty, horrified is maybe a word I would use.
Well, we had an old book in the house from 1844, and it was the Annals of Pittenweem, where this fellow Pittenweem chap, David Cook, had written this. He'd gone into the archives of Pittenweem, and he just from the 1500s right up to 1800s. He'd done an itemized kind of year by year interesting things that happened in the town. This ship's going down. There's problems with the harbour. There's just casual things, but then it hits on witches and witchcraft, and it's itemized horribly in detail on the problems they had there and the problems they made out of them. And a little place like Pittenweem, which had about 600 people at the time. They found 26 witches in amongst their people, their very own parishers, and they killed the majority of them. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. And it's a day-to-day from the parish records. A lot of it's from. I was so intrigued by this horrific case that I actually went to the parish church itself to ask who better, the minister, where all these records have come from, what they could tell me on do they have any more records? And I went to the Pittenweem parish, and I sat down. Now I'd come up from London. I was living in London when I decided to do this. I wanted to write the story of the Pittenweem witches, so I came up and I sat down with the minister at the time. And I said I was wanting to come in and talk about local history, which I was. But the minute I mentioned witches and witchcraft, he put his hand in my face and told me to leave. And
really?
I went, and he went, leave. So I was intrigued. I was not welcome on that subject. And if you've read my book, the WEEM Witch, which is here, the WEEM Witch. You'll understand why the church isn't very keen to talk about this subject. They basically murdered their own people. They murdered their own people that sat in their own church, made them victims, scandalized the whole thing, and killed them. And with the most brutal aspects you can imagine.
Do you think that's because people
hunt
didn't like them? You know, is this just a popularity thing? So we didn't like
they made them out
you're being a witch.
They made them out to be these terrible people, which they were not. I mean, the witch hunts in Pittenweem lasted 100 years. There was 5 trials. 26 people were arrested. They killed 17 of them. And I was working in a house in. I was living in Pittenweem in the year 2000, and a house on James's Street, King Charles Street, was getting renovated, and I got called round to the house and said, "There's something here I think you'd be interested in." And I got round there, and I went, "Oh my goodness!" They'd taken down the walls inside this old house. And what they had, I'm going to show it to you here, is this was in the walls. Can you see that?
Yeah, what's that?
It's a witch. It's a witch bottle. This has had a Bellarmine witch bottle. It has a face on the front here, and there's a crest of the someplace in Germany, and the date on it is 1600. Now, what they used to do is this was a prevention against witchcraft. They would know who was a witch in the town, and they would sneak up to her or him in the market and then wrench some hair from her and bring it back. They'd wrap the hairs up in nails, pee in this bottle, and then stick it in the walls of the house. And it was seen as a remedy against that witch coming into your house, into your household. So you just protected your house from it. But there was 2 of these. One was smashed to pieces, and I rescued this one, which is covered in mud and stuff. And it's a very rare artifact of demonstrates the fear of the witches in Pittenweem.
Somebody would think that grabbing a bit of somebody's hair and peeing in a bottle and sticking it in your wall would make a fundamental difference to your lifestyle. That must be a total mental thing for someone.
It'd be a good talking point. It'd be a good talking point. What's that? What's that?
What other things?
But the whole thing is,
witches? What other things did they use for witches?
The whole thing used on the witches. It was a whole process of torture. You had to have a witch confess. The Pittenweem was a parish court, so they had the powers to actually arrest and interrogate a witch. They'd get so far with a confession, and then they needed to apply to the government for a commission. You need to pay money for a commission, and a commission allows you to go ahead with the powers of a court and terminate that woman if you wish. And this is what they did. They used all means of torture. And what we have here in the year 2000, again, it was the old Baron of Pittenweem invited me round to the priory in Pittenweem, and he said he had something for me. My book, it's about 2005 actually, but my book, The WEEM WITCH, had come out. Now here's the thing: my book had come out. The book on the Pittenweem Witches. It wasn't in the shops yet, but I already had letters of hate in the East Fife Mail. They're not even read it yet. They've not even read it yet, and they're hating it. And this was amazing. What's going on here? And of course, at the time, the East Fife Mail top man was a friend of mine, and he said it's ministers writing in condemning you for bringing up this subject. And I went, what are they worried about? This is past history, for God's sake. Their whole business is about history, Jesus 2,000 years ago. So you can talk about Jesus, but you can't talk about the 200 years they persecuted witches. But what I was given by this, the Baron of Pittenweem, was he gave me a box, and in the box was some old newspapers, and what was in the box was these old, can you see that, 1600 400-year-old scissors, and they're still cut fairly, they're still sharp and nasty. But the first thing you did when you had a witch was, if she didn't confess straight away, then you had to force a confession out of her. And one way of doing this was to shear all her hair off, as these scissors would have done, and look for the mark on the witch. A witch had a mark in which the devil had actually taken her baptism rites from her. With doing this, he's put his hand on her and he's given her a baptism mark of his own. She now has a mole or a teat or something like that on her body. So they're cutting the hair off the witch to look for this mark. Is it under the scalp? Is it in the hair? Is it in the body? If they couldn't find this mole mark they were looking for, then we come to this nasty little thing. I'll just show you that there. I'm not getting dirty here, but this is called a pricker. I'll get the white background. Can I get the white background? No, you're not going to. It's a witch pricker. It's a brass bodkin, and the idea was, if the mark of the witch is not on the skin, it's inside her. So now they use this device to prod her all over, in the mouth, everywhere, every centimeter. Stab this thing in, and of course you stab this in, you're going to go aya, or you're going to scream, or you're going to do something. The mark they're looking for is meant to be insensible to pain, so they're going to keep stabbing you with this thing until you don't scream. Maybe you're screamed out, maybe you're numb. But when they get a spot where you don't scream, that's as good as guilty. That's your guilty mark.
You're a witch.
That's it. That's it. And from then you'll be paraded round the village, and they'll get to see you and boo you. You're pulled with a rope. They had maybe a few of you have heard of a scold's bridle. Well, this device here is a scold's bridle. It was put over the head of women with this. There's a horrible device here. It would go in the mouth. And so you're wearing this kind of thing on your head, with this bulbous bit here, where a rope would go round, and you'd be pulled through the town. You see, you'd be pulled through the town. But every time I pull you, this device here, this little thing, it would go sit in your mouth. It would smash your teeth to pieces. So absolutely nasty. I have another one here, and this one is more in a day of masks. Maybe I should wear this one. There we go. That one there. It's a metal iron mask, which they would have put on the witch to pull around the town, get the hatred from the village. Everything that's gone wrong in the place, the crops failing, the ship going down, it sank, infant mortality, everything would have been blamed on this one person. And they would have gathered together barrels of coal tar, and they'll set alight to her, they'll burn her. And there was 3 burning places in Pittenweem, well, I'm sorry to say. But even today, I wrote the WEEM Witch in 2005. It came out. It's done 100,000 copies. It's gone through 3-4 editions. This summer, I got filmed. They're on tonight. Men in Kilts. Do you know Men in Kilts? The 2 guys, Outlander, Sam Hugan and Graham McTavish. I got invited to be part of the show last summer with them, and I. Sorry,
is that these guys there?
Are you there
on the screen?
Yeah, that's me. That's them. I got invited to go to meet them in Crail. We went to Wormiston Castle. The show's on tonight in the States. It's not in Britain yet, but we're on to the second show. No, I got filmed before. I've been on TV a few times, but I got filmed before for BBC Two and BBC Alba. BBC Alba, there was one presenter and a camera woman who didn't have a clue what they were doing apart from filming the Pittenweem. That's some Machasee, Machashaw, I think it was called, which is a bit like a coast program. And the entire cast was that young fellow in the shirt and a camera woman, and they had no script, nothing. They turned up to film me about the Pittenweem witches, and they got it. But the Outlander team, oh my God! I turned to Wormiston Castle and Crail, lovely people, the Wormiston Castle folk, and beautiful castle. It's hidden away. Nobody knows about it. It's a fairy tale castle. It's gorgeous. But when I got there, there's 9 trucks. There's 3 producers. They've got a drone team. 5 people working a drone. There's 150 of a cast, and I'm going, what's this for? And I went, it's for you. You're our guest today. We're filming you. And I went, you're joking. So it was enormous. I mean, this is in the middle of COVID, so all these people have had to isolate for a week before they could actually. 150 Americans. Oh, what did that cost? But anyway, we did the filming there, and they were going to film also in Pittenweem and do the Pittenweem witches, because we talked about the Crail witches when we were in Crail at Wormiston Castle. But me and my friend Roger Wilson, he's a sound technician and a good guy from Glenrothes, and between me and him, we filmed a documentary on the WEEM Witch, which should come out this year, and we did it with live actors. So we've got it's a documentary with breaks into live actors all the way along, and we've got some really brave people to act out. Janet Cornfoot, who was one of the Pittenweem witches, she gets badly treated in the sea. They rope her up and dunk her into the sea for hours on end. And we got a woman from Largo who'd let us tie her up and throw her in the sea in the summer, which she went through hell, but it makes great. But when we made this film, we of course we filmed bits in Pittenweem, and I got a phone call. I got a phone call from the local parish who'd heard that we were in town filming and warned us that we'd be sued if we went anywhere near Pittenweem Kirk. So today, they're still at it. They still dislike the reasoning behind my books, and they went as far. I mean, it's comedy. If you want to go into the church, you used to go to the coffee shop and get a key there, and you go in the church and you do your own thing. But I know the woman in the coffee shop, and I went in one day and she said, "You're actually banned from the church." I went, what? She says, what would it be? She says, you're actually, I've not to give you the key, you're banned. I went, banned for what? And she says, it's the book you wrote. It's a load of nonsense. It's a load of untruths and stuff. And I went, does this woman actually know? She actually read the thing? Because go to the back page. The entire book is constructed out of the parish records of her own church. So I went to the Scotsman about this, and I got a headline out of it, and just made her look stupid. And I'm faced with that everywhere I go. Ministers popping up. It's their livelihoods. It's their livelihoods, and you've got their tourists coming around nowadays to the churches, especially in Pittenweem. They're not asking about God; they're asking about the witches of Pittenweem. So there you go. But I worked on the first Harry Potter film and the third one. Is it Prisoner of Azkaban? I think the third one. Wow. But it sounds glamorous, but it's not. It was just a building site. I'm a set builder. A plaster set builder. That's what I was doing there. And my kids at the time, they knew about Harry Potter, and it's a huge affair. And we were doing the first film, and I got to meet J.K. Rowling. She was just a wee shy housewife sitting in the cafe, and we were working all hours, and I got to sit and speak to her, and I told her I was constructing a book on the Pittenweem witches, And she's very interested. She's very knowledgeable and interested. And she said she just come back from America on a book signing, and she said I was in the shop and the queues are coming out the doors, people coming in, and it was great. They've really taken to me. And she says, but every now and again, someone would speak to me and then hand me an envelope. And I was like, oh, what's this? And the minute the envelope appeared, her management team would snatch it off her. Don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. And they'd put it down. And she said she was wondering, what's this all about? But by the end of the day, there's a pile of envelopes. And what our crew told her was, this is your fans who've written their own sequels to your next book. They've written the theme of it, and if any of your next books match what they've written in there, they'll sue the arse off you.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one that's hated by your own people. I found that stunning, but that's what you're up against. If you write things, there's always somebody that's going to hate you.
You know, some of the questions I've got coming through, Leonard, is where can I purchase?
Sorry.
So Craig's asked where can I purchase books? So I've got a link on here to Amazon anyway, so you can click on the link and you can purchase them direct from Amazon. Also,
Amazon sell them. Amazon's horrible because me and my publisher have to take a reduced fee to sell on Amazon because they've got the monopoly of it. If I sell a book on Amazon, I get 50 pence. That's it. And I'll be taxed on that. That's what I get on a book on Amazon. If you buy a book in the shops, I'll get maybe 3 times that. But it's you can buy all the bookshops sell my. I could write a story on this book just trying to get made. This time last year, my Untold Stories should have came out last February, but the Scottish rugby fans all went to Italy to see Scotland play Italy and beat them, and they brought back a horrible disease with them, and this was the start of it. COVID came into the country. It got hold of my publisher and it ruined him in London. He's still alive, but he's a shadow of what he was, and his old business is no more producing books. So my book was a push button from going to the printers, and then it was stalled while COVID ravaged the place. And my apology, I can't print this. I'm not printing anymore. I don't know if I'm going to live. And so I was sitting with a book I'd spent 2 years writing, and then came Garbage Books, an American guy called David in Garbage in St Andrews, a publisher. He does a lot of science fiction, and he took a gamble, a book published, ready to go. So he took it on, and this is a result of that. It should have came out on December the 7th. The minute it came out, COVID had hit all the distribution, so there was none of the distribution places could manage the book. I was missing the Christmas market, of course. It finally reached all the Waterstones and Ottakers and all the bookshops. It reached them in about the 20th of December, and the shops all shut. They've been shut since. So the only way you can get this book is online or from me, or from Garbage Books at the moment. But
then it's a book that will stand the test of time. Really.
This is my first ebook. Yeah, this is my first book as an ebook. It's just come out now, so we're giving that a try. And I've got a lot of American interest in this book this time, with having an American publisher, and with the Men in Kilts show. Americans go berserk over this show. It's ridiculous how popular it is. I'm in contact with Sam Hugan from the show, and he wants me to do some more Zooming with him and his friends, which will be good. And there's talk about Men in Kilts 2. So they've asked me to come back on that, which will be great. To talk about witches again on some other mission. But anyway, Yeah. So where can you get the book? You can Amazon's the only place you can get it just now, or Garbage Books, or via me. I'm great for posting books out to you.
Perfect. Okay, so Karen, we know Karen Marshall. I think Bruce, your dad, was your best man. Yeah. She says, what was your favourite book to write?
Karen, I've sorted out your pay rise. It's definitely happening. It's all in the post. I've sorted it. It's a shake of the hands before we started this. Now, Karen's a wee sweetie. My favourite book to write. I think my publisher was my publisher in London was kind of perplexed that I went from writing the WEEM Witch, which was a major seller in its thousands from the beginning, and since the WEEM Witch came out, I had a BAFTA winner, Emily Barker. She won a BAFTA for her music for Wallander, the Wallander hit show on the telly. And she's like a Australian folk singer, and she read my book and she wrote a song about the Pittenweem witches, and I thought that was lovely. And now it's happened a few times. It seems to be a good thing to write about. But my publisher wanted me to write more on the subject of witches, but my heart's from Largo, and I'm born in Largo, and Largo is an amazing place for history. It has its witches, it has its warriors, it has its Romans, Pictish, all kinds of stuff going on there. 3 major castles, and the history is just dripping off it. So I wanted to write a book on Largo. So my second book was like Largo's Untold Stories. There it is, Largo's Untold Stories. And I mean, Largo's got a population of a few hundred. And this is what my publisher goes, what are you doing? You've gone from writing a major book to a wee book. But I was quite happy with what I'd produced, because of the rich history of Largo, Robinson, everything. Largo, Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe is the last person I want to write about. I want to know about in Largo. There's much more interesting people. Harry Goodsir, for God's sake. He was one of the Arctic Sir John Franklin guys who went up over the ice there. 137 of them, and none came back.
Wow.
They all cannibalized each other, nasty business. But even today, if you go down by the yacht club in Lower Largo, they look up to the big house, and it's Harry Goodsir's house. It's still called Goodsir House. That's where he lived. These are Largo people. His remains were found. He was the only remains that were found, brought back, stuck in a box in England, and then they started experimenting on his teeth and bones, and they actually found out who he was, because it was just a skeleton when they found him, but through DNA they found out who he was, and I found his relative, which he runs a bus garage in Buckhaven, A1 buses, I think it is. And he's still got the name Goodsir.
Oh, David.
Yeah. So the question to the answer was, the answer to the question was, I think the Largo book to me means the most of what I've written so far. Karen with the pay rise.
Couple of questions. Bruce has come in and said, "Tell Len I'm still waiting on the check clearing for playing the soldier in the Battle of Symponans film on the beach." Glynis actually says, "Is Largo's Untold Stories e-version on Kindle only, or Scotland's Untold Stories?" Yes, I think that is the case. You only get 50 pence. Would you like to read
just the Scotland's Untold?
And love the WEEM Witches, great Sunday slot. Thanks, Glennis, for saying that. So Garbage Books is probably the source to get a copy.
Garbage Books or myself. You contact myself, and I'll get a book sent to you. until the bookshops are open, and I'm hoping they'll be open the next month or so. It's just been a disaster. It's all there. I'll have my day, but it won't be for another month yet, maybe until this disease calms down. And the Battle of Symponans. I mean, this is what I love doing.
This is the one that intrigues me the most, Len. It's the Battle of Symponans. It's like, what happened there? Give us the story.
1548. We've just had a massive. The English arrived across the border in their there's about 30,000 of an army ravaged across the border simply for the fact that Mary Queen of Scots would not marry Henry VIII's son. We decided to marry her off to the French Dauphin, and to the anger of Henry VIII, he sent his army across the border, and they called it the rough wooing. We're going to wreck the place until basically you say yes to this marriage. And so the Scots troops garrisoned themselves, and there was a massive battle at Musselburgh, and this was like a medieval Scottish army fighting a modern English army. They attacked the Scots by sea and by land, and we had nothing to stand against them. Cannonballs went through the troops. There was a rout, and that was the end of the Battle of Pinkie. The death toll was horrific, because about 10 to 14,000 Scots killed. But we still had a fighting force, and we ended up with like trench warfare across Edinburgh fighting the English. Now the French arrived. The French arrived, about 6,000 of them. This is a great story. The English attacking force was two brothers, the Seymour brothers. One, the Henry VIII's queen was Seymour when she was on the throne. The two brothers, one took over the army, one took over the land force, the navy. So anyway, the land forces Seymour has had a victory over the Scottish forces in Edinburgh, and he's top turkey. But the Admiral Seymour, not so good. He's done nothing yet so far, and he's got his navy out in the Bay of Fife. And what they're meant to do, they're meant to stop Mary Queen of Scots leaving Scotland. And so he decided she's going to leave from Edinburgh. We're going to catch her, and that's that. But she left from the Clyde. She left from the other side of Scotland, leaving him with all his ships here, going, "Oh, damn, what have we done?" But in the meantime, she went to France, and the French armed, and they came back up. In the middle of one night, with the English fleet lying out in the Forth, 6,000 French sneaked past them. They never saw them. They sneaked past them, and before they know it, they've reinforced the Scots forces in Edinburgh. The English are going mental. Their admiral has just made another boo-boo. Now he decided the fight against the English was all coming from St Andrews with Cardinal Beaton. Now Cardinal Beaton was the one that said no to Henry VIII about the marriage. He'd already been killed, but the English, the admiral, decided to take his fleet with an army and land in Symponans in 1548. Land in Symponans and march his troops through and try and attack St Andrews by land. They weren't expecting it by land because they thought the navy would come round on the coast of St Andrews, land there, and they could defend them. But anyway, what he didn't know was that the Earl of Weems had taken a commission from the Scottish Dowager Queen, and his mission was to protect Fife. Do what you can to protect Fife. He'd formed a hard-hitting army that would keep an eye on the English fleet and see where they're going to land. Now, he saw a movement. He gathered his troops, the Earl of Weems. He went around the coast. He reached Largo, and from Largo, he got the Wood brothers, and they had Largo Castle, so they emptied the castle, and then they chased round, and they found that the English were going to land in Symponans. This is where they're heading. So they got there before them. They dug a trench up in the hilltops, and they hid, and they let the English land. And there was about 5,000 to 6,000 English landed at Symponans on the beach there. And as they were disembarking, this whole load of smoke appeared. The Scots had dug a trench and filled it full of oil and set fire to it, and all this reek was coming up. So the English knew the Scots were near, and they armed up and charged up the hill by just where Newark Castle is. So they charged up the hill. They didn't realise that behind the smoke was the Earl of Weems and the Largo brothers Wood, and joining them quickly was Mary Queen of Scots' half-brother James Stewart, riding hard from St Andrews. He was 17 years old at the time, but he brought a lot of French and Scottish troops with him. Now, the English formed themselves up, pikemen, and they started walking up the gradient of the hill. When they reached the flames, they didn't realise that the Earl of Weems had set up a load of cannons behind the flames. They couldn't see them. So the minute they reached the smoke, the cannons fired, and then the Scots charged through on top of them from all sides, and they beat them back to their own boats, leaving many thousands dead. I think 900 was the highest count dead. They sunk a ship as well, and the English, poor Mr. Seymour, went to sea. It was another disaster. It was a great victory, but why do we not know anything about this? Well, the thing is, the leaders, James Wood, one of the Wood brothers, would be assassinated. James Stewart himself would be assassinated. The Earl of Weems would die. He was an old man. On the English side, Thomas and Seymour, he was a genius. He went back to London, and I mean, this guy controlled a navy of 10,000 people, and he thought he could capture the young prince, hold him to ransom, and he would be the new guardian of the king. But as he tried to capture the young prince, somebody's dog came out and started woofing at them in the gardens of Kensington, and he shot it dead. That's a good way to have a surprise attack. And they all got caught, and he would be beheaded. So all the leaders of the battle, are now dead, and we've got the dissolution of the monasteries in 1560. So we've got St Monan's church right on the battlefield. That's where all the records would have been kept. That place got ransacked with John Knox's speech from Catholics to Protestants, and to make matters worse, when Oliver Cromwell was up here in 1650 and controlled Scotland, he took all the Scottish records back down to London with him. And they're sifting through them all to see where all our taxes and money and mines and wherever we're making money, where was it going? And when Charles II came on the throne, all these files came back to Scotland. We demanded them back, but there was a disaster. There's a ship called Elizabeth that grounded and went down off the coast of Newcastle, and it had 80 odd barrels of Scottish history records, all the Fife Coast. And that's where I think the details of this battle ended up in the sea.
Wow.
So we've got all the leaders killed. We've got this monasteries getting burnt to a crisp, and then all the letters and documents went down into the sea. So how do I know about it? Well, letters by people who were in the battlefield were still 2-3 pages of people who were actually part of the fighting exist in 3-4 locations. There's a French version, there's a couple English versions, and there's a couple of Scottish versions, and it's from these letters that I can construct the Battle of St Monans. And a good he's dead now, but I've got a good friend of mine.
I'm getting up and looking over to see if I can see, but you're on the screen.
Well, what we have here is that's a battle axe.
Yeah,
that's a battle axe, a Scottish battle axe that was found on the battlefield there. But I had a friend of mine, a keen metal detector. I've got actually some. Oh, where are they now? I can't find it. Cannonballs.
wow.
These are metal detector finds from the castle. This is like grape shot, what you'd expect to use against troops. You'd have a whole sock full of these balls, and of course they fire, and they would split the
It causes much
split the enemy
possible, really.
all over the place. Yeah, but these were found. These are metal detecting finds on the battlefield from a friend of mine who's years ago said to me, you should explore this area because something big went on here. I keep finding artillery bits, and it was only when I came across letters of an actual fight going on there that I explored it even more. So so that's the Battle of Symponans.
So that was the Battle of Symponans. So it then led you on to, was it Untold Stories for St Andrews?
Aye, my mum and both my grands were from St Andrews. I know St Andrews well. St Andrews has got a rich history. I was following up a Toryborn witch called Lilius Eddy, which was a fantastic story, and she's in the book. The Lilius Eddy was one of the late 1704-5 trials in Toryborn. She's an old bewildered woman, but she actually died before they could actually get her to trial. And so they've got this dead witch, and they didn't know what to do with her. So they said, we can't burn her because she's not been condemned in a trial. She might be a witch, she might not be a witch. We don't know what to do. So just to make an even pairing on this, we'll bury her in the sea. We'll bury her in the sand, and then hold water over the top of her. We'll deal with the witch. But anyway, this rather famous painter, Joseph Noel Paton. He was one of Queen Victoria's royal painters, and he dug up her bones, and he used her skull as show in all his in some of his an area of curiosities. And in the curiosities would be Lilius Eddy's head. And so her skull was there, and it went to the Hunterian Museum for a while, and then it ended up in St Andrews Museum. And they had a doctor from Dunfermline who examined it and photographed it. So we actually have a photograph of it now. And he was like a brain surgeon or some sort of genius with the heads. And he said she had a diseased brain. Okay, I'll take that from granted. But one thing about Lilius Eddy is she was the most buck-toothed person I'd ever seen in my life. Her teeth came out almost vertical. She must have been horrific to look at. And this is what made her peculiar. And this is what people accuse people of being witches for, because there was some sort of peculiarity about them. The skull went missing. We don't know what happened to it, but we just got the photographs. So I wrote about that, and I got into St Andrews Museum and St Andrews University, and I was in the bowels of the place looking for the skull, see if I could find it in all their boxes. It couldn't be found. We don't know where it is. So somebody's got a skull sitting in their garage in a box somewhere, and it's Lilius 80.
And they'll literally think it's an just a normal a normal thing from like some dramatic set or something like that. But this is actually original.
Yeah, well, that's true. She's sitting there somewhere. Nobody knows where she is, and that's a shame. So I wrote about her in my St Andrews book is trying to find her. But in St Andrews, I love history, and I love. I don't want to go through the boring stories you've heard a million times. I like to go deeper in wee cheeky ones. And in my St Andrews book, if you've seen it, we've got the St Andrews sausage slaughter. What's that about? Brilliant story. During the war. We had two butchers in St Andrews right next to each other, and one of them, we don't know what went wrong, but one of their they used to make piles and piles of sausages. I mean, there was Navy base there, there's an Army base there. The amount of sausages they're producing was horrendous, but someone somewhere accidentally put in a special herb into the sausages. And it was rat poison. They thought it was a herb, and they threw it in, and it started killing people. People were eating these sausages in St Andrews and killing people. They actually thought it was a Nazi. This is a Nazi trick. The Nazis doing this to us because there's an army base around here. And I just found things like that amazingly hilarious. And more stories like Al Capone, the nasty Al Capone, the Chicago gangster. He almost lived in St Andrews. He was going to buy a house in St Andrews. That would liven the place up a bit. Imagine him in your golf club.
And that takes me on to your book, which is Scotland's Untold Stories. I mean, this is fascinating. I tell you, the one thing I could say about this is if you pick this up, you'll never put it down again. It is so addictive because everything's in short, sharp, funny, but factual stories. And the ones that resonated for me was Jack the Ripper and Pittenweem.
Wait till the minister complains about that.
Absolutely fantastic. And then For Sale Macintosh. So let's talk about the one for Sale Macintosh. This is a classic story.
Well, what you're going to understand, the sale For Sale Macintosh was 1828, I think it was. And it's a newspaper story. I mean, it's in the newspaper at the time and scandalized. But this is going to be horrible to all your female listeners. They're not going to believe this, a word of this. But when you married ladies in the olden days, you were your man's property. You were property. You were goods, and it was legal for a man if he needed. He could sell you. And this fellow in Edinburgh, he got his wife one day and said, let's go down the market. And she went, oh, that's nice. She says, put your nice dress on. She went, oh. So she puts a nice dress on. And then he go, put a nice hat on. And she goes, oh, you've been awfully nice to me today. And so she had her best hat on and best clothes. And she wanders down the market with him, hand in hand. And he gets her to the marketplace, and there's a place like an auction, and it's for animals and stuff. He brings out this placard for sale and sticks it around his wife's head. And she's for sale. He's selling his wife, taking her down the market to sell his wife, and she was bought. She was bought.
What I find so funny was the very fact there is a retribution, by the way, for this. What's so funny is all the men came out the pubs and they were all roaring drunk and they were all making a malarkey of this and they were all overbidding and bidding with each other and fighting with each other over it. And then it got right round the whole town. And it went round like wildfire between all the women. And then all the women congregated together and 700 women descended on that area and beat the living shit out of the men.
It's a scary place to be, but they did. There was an army of women that went on the rampage when they heard what this guy had done. In Scottish law, it was illegal for a woman to live on her own. She could not live on her own. She couldn't own a property, And this is why women were picked on in the witch trial eras, because they were easy meat. They had no legal representation. They had no education. They did what they're told, basically. And that's the horrific thing about it. And it fascinates me to no end the extent of the witch hunts. I mean, I right here, I collect artifacts going right back to the trials here. As I've just shown you before we came on live here. Here's this is a newspaper from 1682 on the trial of Major Weir in Edinburgh. But I've got a horrific letter here, a horrific letter, and this letter is from 1703, and this letter here is concerning Catherine Campbell. Now, Catherine Campbell, and this is in association with the Pittenweem witches. This is a lawyer's letter to the family of Catherine Campbell. Catherine Campbell was one of the Balgarin witches. Now, that's in Paisley. The Balgarin witches was a household in which one of the servants caught the owner of the house's daughter, 11-year-old daughter, stealing milk and gave her a slap. Next day, the daughter is thrown up and been ill in her bed, telling she's bewitched. I'll cut a long story short here, but all 7 of the servants in the house were tortured and burnt as being witches because of this wee girl. Now, that was a story that was given to a boy in Pittenweem in 1704 who acted out exactly the same procedure to have the women that he didn't like in Pittenweem arrested for witchcraft. But the thing on this letter, this letter to Catherine Campbell, is she's dead. She's been burnt as a witch. But this is from the minute you're arrested and went over the threshold of a jail, you cost money, and that money you have to pay. You've got to pay that back to the authorities. The minute you go over the threshold, you cost money. And so the burning of witches was very expensive. Tar, I mean, the fuel, the court case, feeding you, everything cost loads of money. But what this letter is everything that Catherine Campbell owns has been sold, and it hasn't met her burning costs. So now the lawyer is chasing up other members of her family to address the bill, and that's what that letter is here. These are pieces of history that I love, and it's stuff that I can get a story from and write about.
One of the other things that intrigues me is the answer of their pirate hunters, and I was gobsmacked to find out that Buckhaven used to be called Buccaneers Haven, and that's why it's now called Buckhaven.
That's right, Buccaneers Haven. That's 14th century. I think they were Dutchmen, and they'd run into a storm. They come around the coast, and they were allowed to settle in Buckhaven, and they were meant to be pirates, and the Buccaneers Haven, and that's where. But yeah, you're right. Buckhaven gets his name from.
But then it's a story as well about the pirate hunters themselves and how they came down from England, and then all the guys got together and says, right, let's get a rally, and we're going to get a battleship, and we're going to blow these people out of the water.
That's it. But you got to remember, Anstruther and Pittenweem were major armed ports, and they were major navy bases as well. But and the amount of fishing boats was in the hundreds there. If you see it today and see it when it was in the busy years, it was shocking how many boats they could fit in there. But yeah, there's great stories.
Yeah. What about the story? I mean, you've got an obsession with Jack the Ripper. Can we briefly talk over, because we're probably going to do another show about this, because Jack the Ripper, give me 2 or 3 minutes of Jack the Ripper. I mean, about
in Pittenweem
and where the obsession comes from.
Well, Jack the Ripper, I moved to London, and I had the idea of writing a book, and I wrote the WEEM Witch. Now, if you write a book and you've got every intention of seeing the starry lights and your book in the shops and stuff like that, well, you've got to get a publisher, and that's where it starts. So you write your book, you've got your book written, and then you read up. What the publishers want is 3 chapters, a synopsis in the book, and then post it to them. But the thing is, they'll say, if we haven't got back to you in 6 months, don't worry about it. You're not going to get a reply. And that's horrible. But that's what you're up against. These publishers maybe have 20 issues of a book a year. And when they get when they get enough for 20 that they're going to publish, they don't look at anything else. So your letter just lies in pile. They don't reply to you. They don't do anything. It's horrible. So all these people with their hearts in the right place to be authors, potential authors, it's a really hard game to get into. I suppose it's a bit like the music industry as well. But what I did was I went to I found a publisher that would do my kind of stuff, Scottish history, and he had his office in Liverpool Street. So I went to see him, and when I got to his house, I recognised his house. I recognised his office. It's the murder scene of Elizabeth Stride, one of Jack the Ripper's 1888 victims. And she was killed right outside his place. I went, well, that's weird. So anyway, I met the publisher, and I sat down, and he gave me my 10 minutes, and I told him what I wanted to do. And he thought the story of the Pittenweem witches, the Weem Witch, he thought it was fiction. I went, no, it's all true. It happened. And he went, well, if you can write it like you say it, then I'll be interested. And this is what I did, and then things take off from there. But I ended up working up at High Barnet, the original old asylum mental home. We turned that into flats. We raised it and turned it to flats. Massive. It was like a whole town, a town of mental people, where little leather padded rooms with suicide notes everywhere in the walls. Every crack had a suicide note. The history of this place, I think it was an asylum for about 300 years, but it was like a town. They had their own farms and shops and stuff there. They kept themselves to themselves. But in this place, they had 3 of the Jack the Ripper actual meant to be him in the place. The Polish guy Kosminski was the one they really think it was him. So I was actually working in the rooms where they were kept. And as I left London, one of my last jobs was in Dr. Gull's house down in Crystal Palace. Now, Dr. Gull, if you've seen the Johnny Depp film of Jack the Ripper, Dr. Gull was Jack the Ripper. He was Queen Victoria's surgeon. I worked in his house, a big mansion, and when we I got turned into flats as well. But when we got into the basement, we came across. We broke down a room that was just full of shoes, like children's shoes. Don't know if there's anything creepy there, but yeah. So I've always had a kind of big interest in Jack the Ripper.
Is this going to be another book for you then about Jack the Ripper, or do you think?
No. I write for Haunted Magazine. Magazine. I write for them. I've been with Haunted Magazine for about 8 years now. It's a monthly thing. It's free online, and they do paper copies, and they're getting very big in the States. And I regularly write for them. Me and my friend Roger, we go to haunted locations, and we so far I've had 7 of what I've caught on camera in national newspapers, and that's another sideline of what I do, and me and Roger.
So we can go back to Haunted Magazine and talk about that as well. That's an hour, Leonard. I can't believe that's past.
Has it gone already?
Yeah, an hour already. So we're going to wrap up there. If you've got any more questions for Leonard, please feel free to ask on this post. More than happy to take these questions. And Leonard's got loads of lectures and events that he does online himself. So please follow his page as well. Once again, Leonard, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And guys, I'll see you all next week. It's going to be Toby's Magical Journey. where Toby Everidge actually underwent cancer as a child and set up a charity as a natural result of what they're doing. So next week, Sunday slot's going about Toby's magical journey. And I'll see you all next week. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Leonard. Thank you.
No worries. Bye-bye.